So when we look at creation in the world, and we say that there is disease, that there is poverty, that there is hunger, that there is thirst, that there is war, that there is strife, that there is hate, that there is violence, that there is the detriment, and most especially as we feel and we fear that there is death, God says, even still, I want you to be intimately united with me in love. Because love is of God. The virtue, the formed habit, consistent with who God is and who we are is love. And when we say we begin to believe in God, I know within myself, I look at creation, I look at the universe, I look at the stars, and I say, there has to be a God. When I look in the mirror and I say, oh yeah, there's got to be a God. Nobody got that? Okay. When I say that there must be a God, there must be creation, I believe in faith. And faith is the intellectual, theological virtue given us to know that the truth, and know that the truth will set us free, to know that God is sure in everything that he says is true. And so as we begin to believe, St. Paul will go on to say that we are saved by hope. Because when we begin to believe, when we begin to see not just creation in that feeling, we see that feeling because we believe it, we'd say we're saved in hope because we need to do something with that feeling. That feeling doesn't just stay within ourselves, and it doesn't just stay within our intellect. So that's why when somebody says to you, are you saved? What is your reply? I hope. Are you saved? I hope. Because I believe. And we're saved in hope. St. Paul said that. Are you saved? I hope. Hope is believing that what God says is true and will be brought to fulfillment. Faith is, the letter to the Hebrews, the evidence of things not seen. And those things revealed to us that we come to believe, and we're saved in hope. And yet still, I believe. Okay, wonderful. I believe all of this. And are you saved? I hope. Because I know what? I have to do something. I have to do something about it. So how do I do something about it? If I believe, I hope that I'm saved. What do? Third theological virtue, I love. Because that's who God is. Life becomes very simple. All I have to do is believe and hope that I'm saved. And then love. Because this is who God is. That's why we name the theological virtues. Those particular consistent habits of spirit that show us who God is and also who you are, creation. Because you were created to freely give and freely receive.
The world around us,
and when we look at the world around us,
wonderful, Father Toole, but it still seems impossible. It still seems impossible. Because I still get nervous. I still worry. I still have to pay taxes. Most assuredly. I still worry about my relationships.
I still worry about my addictions and my problems. I still worry about my shortcomings, my doubts, and my sins. And it seems impossible. And yet we're told over and over again, nothing is impossible for love. Nothing is impossible for love. Nothing is impossible for God. Because you were freely created, you were freely redeemed, and now you're freely invited to love. We're not just confronted with particular ills and wrongs in society or in ourselves. We also understand that there is the reality of evil. We name it. We say that there is evil. But even more so, what is greater, there is love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. It does not brood on wrong. It does not judge. Love endures all things. It hopes all things. Love never, ever, 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 ever. Love never fails. Ever. Do you believe that? Are you saved? What are you going to do about it? Love. Because it never fails. Because it's who? It's you. And it's God. And this is what St. Paul was trying to tell the church in Corinth. Love one another. Who said that? As I love you. Love one another. From the beginning of creation to the middle to today and forever. Love. Love one another. And so we would say that we can put on the mind of Christ, as St. Paul would say in his New Testament letters, our own strength. We cannot overcome the challenges. We cannot overcome the detriment. But from the beginning, God said it was not so that way. You weren't supposed to overcome it. You weren't supposed to overcome your trials and tribulation. Our Christian theology would teach us that from the fall, which we now know the fall is what? From the beginning, humanity sinned by taking. What is original sin when somebody asks you? It is the taking. Instead of the receiving freely and the giving freely. This is original sin. Original sin entered into the world and humanity fell. And creation fell. And the world turned in on itself. And now life has become, if we think about it, God, when the book of Genesis describes it as the Garden of Eden, creation, but when sin entered into the world, which is the taking, when sin entered into the world, earth fell in on itself, creation fell in on itself, and turned upside down. And so now life becomes the long ascent back to paradise. And yet, we're still freely invited to freely give and freely receive. We believe this. Are you saved? We hope. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Do you believe that? Right? So that's what we're going to talk about in a second. What are we going to do about all of it? We have to have the solution. If we're talking about God, we talk about the beginning, the middle, and the end. And most especially, we'd say that, what are we going to do about it? Also, what are you going to do with the time you have left? The time that you have left. Because we're frightened. We're afraid because we know most certainly that we will have to pay taxes. And that we will die. And so now we have the solution, which we're going to talk about in 5 minutes. We're going to talk about the solution is Jesus Christ. Let's take a break.